My name is Dr. Artika Tyner. I'm an author, a publisher, but more importantly, an educator. So I recognize the importance of books, that books can help to open up our eyes to the world around us, to build connections, and to bring people together in meaningful ways, to help us discover our shared humanity and our common destiny. So when I think about why diverse books matter, they are critically important because still yet today, you're more likely to see a book, a children's book in particular, on the cover with a black bear and a black dog, than on the cover having a black girl or a black boy as the main character or protagonist. So we know that representation matters. It helps to create those mirrors so young people of color can see a clear reflection of themselves, of their greatness, their ability to live out their dreams and make their ancestors proud. And for all children to create those windows to see into the cultural experiences of others, to build that empathy, that compassion, and that connection that we need to help to strengthen and weave together the rich tapestry that we call the world and society. So diverse books are vitally important for everyone. So as I think about what that means and what is the opportunity is for you and I with this writing competition to lean into our imagination, lean into our cultural history, and lean into the power to write for social change. So how do we do that? How do we begin the writing process? I would say one, by reading good books. So part of my work, when I first initially started as a children's book author, I would spend on the average an hour to two reading the latest children's books, looking back to history of the past, of some of the classics, to get a sense of, the first thing for me was writing in the voice of a child, making sure that my reading materials were engaging. Because if you know anything about my background, I'm used to writing academic books. I wrote a dissertation, of course. I wrote legal textbooks. So in that mode, I was used to writing in a more technical way related to my professional discipline. Writing children's books gave me a whole different lens in which I was able to see the world, to tap into my five senses. What did I smell when I walked into a room? Like, for instance, for me, tapping into smell was when I walked into our kitchen this past Sunday, I smelled sweet potatoes. So I knew there were sweet potato pies coming or candy yams. I had to tap into that experience, and it brought me back to my childhood of the highlight of those Sunday soul food dinners. What do you touch? What are the textures? What are you experiencing? From the first time maybe that you even touched the grass outside or touched the beauty of a petal of a lily, whatever it may be. What are those experiences? So you're tapping into the five senses authentically to be able to see, hear, smell in those tangible ways through that discovery of the lens of a child. So when I think about the writing process, it's getting into that mode. So also writing prompts. Make sure that you can find them readily available online. Join a listserv that sends out those daily prompts. What are those ideas? For instance, let's say the writing prompt for today is, how do you celebrate Malcolm X Day? So part of maybe how you start that journey of that writing prompt is learning more about Malcolm X. What inspired you about Malcolm X? For me, it was his commitment to education. So we know his quote that gives us a sense that education is the passport to the future. So that preparation starts early. So if I was writing a book about Malcolm X in his childhood, I talk a little bit about his educational experience, talk about how he loved STEAM, the math, the sciences, the arts, that he brought it all together, especially in his work as a minister. So thinking about how do you bring those pieces together to connect history, to connect a plot, to connect a theme. How do we do this? So I would start off with research. I'd want to know more about his educational experience. What did it look like? What were his strength areas? How did he learn how to be such a great orator? Where did that come from? So that would require me to do some extensive research and to go back in time to understand what was his experience like as a child. That's just one example of a writing prompt. But if you start off with a mechanism of practicing those writing prompts, you will discover that over time that you've tapped into your ability to create, to explore, and imagine through the eyes of a child. So those writing prompts are critically important. Also content. Now, I traditionally write nonfiction children's books because I want to connect our young people to the heroes and sheroes of the past, to inspire them in the present on how they can make a difference. So the challenge question for me in all of my books, you see it emerge, is what is in your hands to make a difference in the world? So apart then, if I'm focusing primarily on those nonfiction books, is that I'm looking for opportunities to learn more about history that I'm constantly reading. Last night, I was up late, and what was I reading? The Smithsonian Magazine. I wanted to learn more about the blues, music, sound. Those experiences helped to form my latest book, Kofi Loves Music, because over about a year's time, I was exploring music, its origins, the sight, the sound, tapping into all those senses. And the beauty of it was, I also had a chance, since Kofi Loves Music is looking at the origins and history of music in Africa, I had a chance this past summer to learn more about creating music. And where was I? I was in Ghana, and I had a chance to hear a band play many of the instruments that I described in my book, and to see that rhythm, that sound, that pace. More importantly, I was intrigued by the versatility that each of the musicians could play a range of different instruments. How did that connect to one of my other goals? My work also focuses on inclusive leadership, on the strategies of promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. So then I use, and notice this piece as you're thinking about writing and your style and your mission. I use this idea of music then, helping to create this harmony from freedom and justice through the sounds of different rhythms coming together. That could be the same background of the sounds relating to different ethnicities working together, different cultures working together. So as you can see, the learning, the opportunity to write is everywhere. It's surrounding you. So it leaves me with another tip. Make sure you have that notebook, pen, and paper wherever you are. And some may use the digital piece. Maybe it's on your cell phone, your iPad, whatever technology you use. But always have the opportunity to jot down that idea or that thought when it comes to mind. Because truly the materialization of all of my books is a series of Post-it notes. In many ways, I write down an idea as soon as I hear it, as soon as I'm thinking about it, as soon as it speaks to me. And then over time, I bring the pieces together, whether it's related to those nonfiction pieces of helping to create a timeline of time, space, and impact, but also for those fiction pieces. Sometimes maybe that character speaks to you, and that character says something like, in my Justice Makes a Difference book, young Justice says, I can sing for justice. And why is this important? Because the day when I wrote that particular line, I was listening to Sam Cooke's A Change is Going to Come. So it really spoke to me in that sense of music has a powerful role to play in social change movements. So what are you getting a sense of? That the process of being an artist and tapping into the literary arts is a day-to-day relationship with learning, growing, and exploring. So be open to it. Be open to learning wherever you are and learning new lessons, because I can tell you over time, you will connect all of the dots as you're starting to write and put your brilliance on paper with each of the projects you may be working on. So what are the elements of a children's book? The key elements, of course, that you want to work on is to make sure that you develop the characters for the fiction, both nonfiction pieces. For the fiction piece, you want to get a sense of, I talked about my book, Justice Makes a Difference. You want to get a sense of who is 8-year-old Justice, who inspires her. And that's why you have a grandmother in the story. Grandma Nellie is the inspiration. She gives her those leadership lessons about that piece that you're never too young to make a difference. That service is the rent that we pay to live in society, that quote from Marion Wright Edelman. So you bring all of those pieces together in some tangible ways through character development. And not only just getting a sense of how the character would speak, what do they look like? Does Justice, for instance, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that's clear through the illustration, that Justice was a part of an experience of learning and growing connected to the earth. The Justice enjoyed being outside. At one point, she talks about the okra that's growing in her grandma's garden. She gives the idea of, can we create a community garden? And she learns more about Dr. Wangari Maathai and the Greenbelt movement. So that piece related to environmental justice, because justice is connected to the earth. and she enjoys those experiences. That was part of the character development, that I wanted to make sure that that component was a theme throughout the book of her love for connecting to nature and her love for connecting with others. So one scene in particular, what is she doing? She's finding that in that statement that she's not too young to make a difference and don't let age define her. She finds that she can serve in her community. So throughout the book, you have countless examples on how she decides to serve, roll up her sleeves, and decide how she can make a difference. So through the character, we want the character to be multidimensional. We want a sense of their fears, their joys, what makes them smile. So I want you to delve deep into each character. Let us get to know them. Let's get to feel their experience. So that way you have clarity of who each character is and what makes them unique. In addition to character, you also want to make sure that you set a good plot. Where is Justice? What experience is she having? So I have two main locations for Justice throughout my book. Justice, of course, is at her grandmother's house. That's really the nexus, the hub of all the learning experiences that Justice has. She notices that her grandmother has that den full of books. So her grandmother creates that invitation around learning. So Justice is surrounded by books. So you have that particular place, the den. The den is not where she's watching television, but the den is a place where she comes in with her grandmother for that quiet time to read. You also have school, because then you're anchoring Justice in a relationship with her peers. Because in one particular scene, she's talking about Shirley Chisholm, that her classmates tell her that a woman cannot be president. And oh, that's the catalyst where she learns about Shirley Chisholm, who in 1972 made the determination that she would be unbought and unbossed by running for this nation's highest office as an African-American female, breaking down barriers, tearing down those glass ceilings, deciding to make a difference. So you can see the plot is helping to define where Justice is and where she's learning some of these key experiences. So what will be the plot for you? Will it be at family dinner? Will it be at the library, at a museum? Where are you setting the context for your book? In addition, you may be thinking about the theme of this particular writing competition. The theme is Juneteenth. So one of the things that I want you to think about is, what is Juneteenth? What does it mean to you? And if it's an opportunity, if you haven't heard much about Juneteenth or haven't celebrated in the past, means you have some homework to do. So getting into your library, tapping into those free resources through the Library of Congress, learning more, history.com, looking at some of the encyclopedias, Encyclopedia Britannica, looking at just some of those components to take you from the past and the history of Juneteenth, and then fast forward to today. Maybe you'll find out about some of the Juneteenth celebrations that happen in your own community. How do people celebrate Juneteenth? What's the purpose? What do we seek to accomplish even today? So when I think about Juneteenth, I build a connection with also some of those themes from Kwanzaa, in the sense of first, Nia, purpose, and thinking about very strategically, what is the purpose of both cultural preservation through my writing and my outreach in the community and my work in general, but also looking at the pieces, if we think about some of these Swahili principles, also thinking about how do we practice Juneteenth today? That the celebration, what does it look like year round? Maybe you're influenced by Ujamaa, the idea of cooperative economics. How can we use, for instance, these opportunities to help build and strengthen our local economies and build a Black ecosystem? What does that look like? So maybe your theme related to Juneteenth is, as we're talking about liberation, how do we talk about economic liberation? So maybe your book focuses on the theme of a young person learning about the power of investing in their community as a means of liberation, of that Nia piece, that purpose, and also Ujamaa, that cooperative economics. What does it look like in tangible ways? It's just one idea of many. So think about, how do you connect that history of Juneteenth to the present and to the future? So the other piece that you might want to think about as well as a theme to integrate in this piece, if we talk about character development and plot development, one of the themes that emerges in all of my books is this idea of Afrofuturism, this piece of the puzzle that oftentimes we miss, of combining the past, the present, and the future. So when we think about Afrofuturism, It's influenced by, and maybe this is homework if you have not read her work before, the work of Octavia Butler. Maybe you look at Kendrick or the Parable of the Sowers, and you get a sense of Afrofuturism, giving us a clear sense of I was, the past. So in this context, the past history of Juneteenth and why it was celebrated. So that question of how do I bring the history of Juneteenth into both my present experience and living as a way of life, the Juneteenth principles of liberation, of freedom, and celebrating culture and history can help influence who I am today. So here it is. The next piece of Afrofuturism, hence the name of futurism, being in the title, is this idea of I will be. What do we reimagine? What are the possibilities? What are the hopes for the future? And we oftentimes see it as a hashtag or as a phrase. How can we be our ancestors' wildest dreams? What will it look like? What will the experience be? So what are we looking for as we evaluate a good book, both as a publisher or even as a part of a writing competition? We're looking for that character development. We're looking for a clear plot. We're looking for a clear message. We're also looking for something that's written in a compelling way to make sure that we can hear the voices of each of the characters represented, to make sure that we can connect with the experience. And in addition to that, we're looking for something well written to make sure that it's free from grammatical errors or mistakes, and that it really sends your best polished work product, that you make that available. So how do you do that? It's not something that you just do alone. I encourage you, as one of my tips for emerging writers as well, join a writing group, connect with others who are writing. And if you don't know of one to join, create your own. Those that are also interested in writing, come together weekly, monthly, share ideas, share manuscripts. I do not write my books alone. I write them through the support of a writing circle that has experience in writing books, writing diverse books for children. When I'm working on my leadership books, I come together with other business leaders, coaches that write as well. Create that writing circle so you can help to encourage and inspire each other. How do you build a career in writing? What does it look like? One key piece that I would say is we keep writing. I talked about writing being a part of your daily routine. Even if you only have 5 minutes per day, keep writing down your ideas. When you see something that sparks and ignites something in your imagination, write it down. And if you don't have the time to write it down, another technique that I use, I always keep a recorder in my purse. So that way I can do the audio recording of some of the ideas as they're flowing through my mind and I don't lose them. So keep writing. Sometimes it's tempting to edit your initial writing before you finished some of your ideas coming forth. Please just keep writing. You have more time to edit. You have more time to go through and help to make your work even better with the power and support of your writing groups. But for now, keep writing and hold yourself accountable. And I'm going to say that word one more time, accountable to your writing. It's that sense of creating that sacred space, that room of one's own to write and create. So it's a part of not only my daily routine, but also my weekly routine. Most Saturdays, I put a special block of time right on my calendar for what? For writing. That way I spend 3 to 4 hours writing, visioning, thinking, imagining, because that way I have that time set aside, quiet time, special place to be able to continue to work on unleashing my imagination in some critical ways. So how do you build connections with other authors and influencers? I think a key piece and a way to do that is through social media. Make sure that you're joining on Facebook, the groups with illustrators, with other writers, connecting on Instagram, finding those writers that you admire, follow them and learn more about what they're writing about. What are they exploring? What are some of the ideas? And also just look at the trajectory of their career. Where did they start off? What are some of the things that they're doing? Some children's book authors oftentimes find themselves also writing poetry. Some others find that they really find a love for education. So they spend a lot of time doing school visits, artist residencies. You have an opportunity to create. And that's the beauty of the experience. Create your own brand and market. So in many ways, I want you to also develop your own one-liner. And when I talk about that, outline what makes you unique as a writer. And I want you to make that a part of either your vision board or post it somewhere that you can see. That way, you have what my coach talks about, the power of manifestation. So of course, my post-it note says, New York Times bestseller, because I want the opportunity to have that national exposure. Pulitzer Prize sounds great too, but you have to start by visualizing what your work is, the greatness inside. So make a manifestation of who you are. I write for social change. My books focus on the ability for ordinary people to have an extraordinary impact. That's who I am. So when I think about what I'm going to write, what type of writing projects I take on, I think about this piece of who I am and what I hope to be my living legacy. So I want you to think about that as well and put it somewhere visual so you can make sure that manifestation of who you are is that talented, brilliant, award-winning author. You give yourself a reminder of that. So what type of organization should you get involved with as you're building your career as a writer? One of the organizations that, of course, I recommend is SCBWI. That's a society that focuses specifically on children's book writers and illustrators. You can read their annual book that gives you practical examples on how to enhance your craft, writing competitions, groups to get involved with. I also encourage you to make sure that you're connecting with the Highlights Foundation. That way, if you need additional training and resources, it's readily available. And also, if you need that sacred space to write, I can tell you and I can attest to that it's a wonderful space in nature where you can write, where you can pause, reflect, and grow. I also encourage you, as far as organizations locally here in the Twin Cities, make sure you connect to some of the programs at the Loft. That way you can either participate in their fellowships, their writing workshops, their conferences, because a big piece of learning and building your craft, just like any other field, is making sure that you're connected to the organizations, the professional associations that can help elevate and take your work to the next level. So here it is, an invitation. I'm giving you the invitation because oftentimes, many of us, fear stops us from going forward to our destiny. So I'm going to challenge you to meet fear with faith, the faith that you can make a difference through your writing and your books, and the faith that that book that's inside of you will help change the world. So I challenge you to join me in this writing competition by writing for social change, helping to highlight the history of Juneteenth and how it can inspire us today. So my invitation to you right now is start writing and start today.